Hey, what's going on? It's the Doug Show. My name's Doug Cunnington, and in this interview, I talked to my friend Dom Wells, and he is working over at Onfolio, which is his now full-time project. And you may be thinking to yourself, I thought Dom was at Human Proof Designs, and he is the founder of Human Proof Designs, but he recently sold the company. So we talk about that, and we talk about growing Human Proof Designs because he worked there obviously for a long time. And he was the founder, so he created the whole thing, and he ended up growing Human Proof Designs to revenue over $1 million, which is crazy. It's a lot of money, of course. And we talk about, why he decided to part ways and his new project Onfolio. So it's a great conversation. I mean, Dom and I have known each other for a long time, so it's always good to catch up with him. It had been a long time. I was really intrigued overall just with growing Human Proof Design, so I ask a lot of questions about that. And I also talk a lot about service businesses because I don't particularly enjoy service businesses, which we mentioned in the interview, but Dom seems to gravitate towards them, and obviously he does a really good job at it. So now he's working on Folio. So anyway, I'm going to send it over to the interview here, and thanks a lot to Dom. Be sure to check out Onfolio and some of the resources that they have over there, just so you are aware. Hey, what's going on? It's Doug Cunnington here, and I'm with my good friend Dom Wells. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Happy to be here. It's always fun when we have our conversations together.
Yeah, it's been a while. We were chatting off the record there for a few minutes, and it was like, it's been several months, maybe a year since we've chatted. So it's good to catch up. And for the folks that don't know you, can you give a little bit of an intro about how you sort of got into the space of online marketing and sort of what you're working on now?
Yeah, I got started with affiliate marketing in 2012. I feel like I didn't really get started till 2013 because 2012 was pretty much reading stuff, building websites that failed miserably, making my first few dollars online, and then trying to figure it out from there. And 2013 was when I first started making like a few $100s a month, and I was just building basically niche sites, just like my first site was stopping smoking, which was a bad niche site because it's not, it's like one of the broadest, most complicated topics out there, but I had just quit smoking, so it seemed relevant at the time. And then I started to have a little bit of success, and in very late 2013, probably more like 2014, I started Human Proof Designs, which was a company where we basically did services specifically done for you website creation for affiliate marketers, mostly beginners who wanted to get started. I'd seen a gap in the market where there were a lot of people buying these kind of turnkey starter websites off Flipper, and they were, I think, Warrior Forum as well, and they were mostly scams or just junk websites that were never going to get anyone anywhere. So I was like, why don't I build good starter websites with training and a community around them and a support group and all of that. And then that pretty much became the thing I did for a very long time, for about 5 years. And I grew that, somehow managed to grow it to $1 million in revenue over 2017 and 2018. And then towards the end of last year, so late 2018, I started Onfolio, which was based on an idea I'd actually had in 2014 and then forgotten about and then rehad, if you rehab an idea. So I started that, and that's basically working with investors and people who want to buy established websites, like maybe $30,000 or $100,000 websites, but they just don't want to run them, or they don't have the skill to run them. So my team and I will be like the operator of the website, and we'll have a management fee and a profit share with the investor.
Got it.
So that's pretty much my focus these days.
Awesome. So that is a awesome trajectory. So you started not knowing anything. It was a little rough in the beginning. You became successful, right? You started making some money, saw the gap in the market to provide some services for the market, and then slowly grew that up into a big business, sold it, and then you found another gap in the market through, being, in the trenches with the market, I guess. I'm using market a lot here, but the point is you identified another gap and now you're filling that. Awesome. Now, most people in the world haven't started a website, and maybe they're thinking about a side gig, but like in the beginning, I know how frustrating it was for me making mistakes, and you alluded to, many failures before you had any success. Can you take us back? Like, what was it like? Like, what were you thinking? How did you keep going when it looked like you were just making a bunch of mistakes?
I don't know how I kept going, really. I think it was because there was so much to learn and so many different things to get excited about, which was definitely, I guess it hindered me to some extent as well, because, there's the shiny object syndrome, and I was being like, maybe I'll do like local lead gen, or maybe I'll try and do like CPA networks, like stuff like Peerfly. And for a while I was on Squidoo and those sites. So those things definitely slowed my progress, but because there was always something new to try, I guess it always meant that when I failed with something, I was like, oh, well, I'll try that thing instead, or I'll try a different niche instead. And so I just kind of, something motivated me to not give up. I guess because I had seen enough people succeeding that I felt like it must be possible. Like, I think my biggest doubt was not that it was possible, it was that I could do it, because I've always been a bit of an underachiever. And so I was like, in the back of my mind, something was like, yeah, but just because someone else is going to succeed doesn't mean you will. But I don't know, I guess I just kind of lied to myself. I BS'd to myself enough that eventually it became true. I was like, no, I can do it. And I really just, there were lots of small things as well. Like I was able to kind of, like maybe my first website didn't do great, but I got better at installing WordPress. Like I remember the very first website, I couldn't figure anything out with WordPress. Like what's the difference between a page and a post and all of that. And so the next time I set up a site, I was like, oh, this was much easier. And then maybe my second website made $10 in a month. And so my third website, I felt like, well, I can make a little bit of money and I can set a website up. So I don't know. It just kept getting better every time. Mm-hmm. And eventually, to be honest, I still feel like it's the same process. Like it's just, the numbers are a little bit bigger now.
Yep. And actually that was my next question as you were making that statement. It's like, does that feeling go away? Because I know it doesn't for me. It's like partially imposter syndrome, and there's a lot of labels for it. But at the end of the day, you just don't know if what you're doing is going to work, even if you've done it a couple times. So has it gone away for you, specifically for like Onfolio, or are you like, yeah, 100%, like this is a go?
No, I think it does stay. I think maybe it changes slightly. Like basic stuff, like you see someone else is doing the same niche as you, or just the same idea, and you're like, oh no. And then it's like, come on, you should know by now that competitors are a good thing because it validates your idea. And also, there's always going to be other people. So you still have these thoughts and these doubts, but I think they're a lot easier to dismiss now because you're like, like, what am I doing? Like, shut up. You push them aside. Whereas when you get them in the beginning, you haven't got that kind of confidence bank to make a withdrawal from. So it's harder in the beginning, but I don't think those feelings ever go away. Mm-hmm. You just get better at dealing with them.
Yeah, totally. Well, I was just looking for validation for myself, I guess, since I still feel that sort of, indecision at times, and you're nervous and you don't know if it's going to work, and you just have to push through. So, all right, still, back in that early sort of part of your timeline there, how did you decide to focus more on services versus, tripling and doubling down on just creating more sites, or did you? I'm making an assumption there, but how did you get into the services business and decide that that was going to be the main deal?
To be honest, it was just where people would pay me. I really think like it was just about figuring out how I could make some money. And when I first started, I wasn't really interested in services. I just wanted like the kind of passive affiliate model. I didn't want to deal with customers and all of that. I didn't want to build become an authority or build a like personal brand or anything. And like looking back is the easiest way to scale a business is to build like a personal brand, as you know, both of us know. But I think really, yeah, it was just I was still growing my own site. So one question I got a lot was, why do you sell sites to people rather than just grow your own? And the answer in the beginning was because I can research like 20 sites a month and I can build 20 sites a month, but I can't run 20 sites. So, you know, maybe I'll run 5 and sell 15. And so it was like there was also a supply and demand thing as well. People were going to pay me to build them a site. So I did still run my own sites and scale them, but I just also sold others. And then as the team got bigger, I realized, well, I can focus more on my own portfolio now because I have more bandwidth again. So it kind of was like, first it was just me doing my own thing. Then it was just growing Human Proof Designs. And then it was growing both. And then like now it's focusing on my own portfolio again. And it is kind of funny because if someone said, do you like service-based businesses? I'd be like, nah, they suck. I hate them. But like objectively, of course. But at the same time, I keep falling into service businesses and I keep doing well with them. So I guess I don't hate them.
It's smart not to fight it,
yeah.
you know. But I mean, I experimented with some service businesses and actually recently did in the past 6 months, and again realized and remembered that I don't really like it that much for many of the reasons which, you know, people know of service businesses. There's a lot of clients. You have to keep the pipeline full. Customer service is big, especially with higher ticket items in our market of internet marketing, where there's some scammy people. You know, to have good customer service is essential. So, yeah, very interesting. Very, very interesting. And it's good that you're like embracing the fact that you do good with services, so you may as well keep moving with it. So, when you started Human Proof, was it just you building the sites? Like, how did you grow the team? Can you just tell us about the trajectory of that up until when you sold it?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was just me. I did everything myself except write content. And in fact, the very first websites I built, I didn't even write the content. I was just like, I'm just going to research a niche, do all the keyword research, build a website and hand it over. But then I was like, people need content. So I was outsourcing content. I think at first I was using iWriter. And that iWriter was great because you could get content turned around very quickly, but it was bad because the content was never that good. So there was a lot of editing required. It was also quite cheap as well, so I could keep the cost of the websites down. And then the first hire I made was someone to assemble the sites for me. So I was just like, okay, I'll give you the articles when they're done and you just assemble the sites. And it was very much, because they were done for you sites, they were all built the same way. So it was like, here's the articles, upload them, do the formatting and like do all the other stuff, like install the plugins and so on. And then he was quite good with plugins. So he was able to create kind of like push button WordPress installations where he would, you know, like the sort of human proof skeleton would be there and then he'd just load in the articles. And then the next hires I made were writers because I was sick of dealing with iWriter and I realized I could actually get it cheaper if I paid in bulk. So I was like, hey, I need 10 articles. If you order one article, maybe you're going to pay like $10 an article. But I could say, hey, here, I need someone to do 10 articles for me for like $60. And someone would be like, they'll just see 60 instead of 10. And they'll be like, yeah, I'll do that. Um, so then, what did I hire next? The next thing I needed was an editor, or like someone who was just in charge of the content. So then I would just give them the keywords, they'd order the content, they'd pass it to the site builder person. And then the next thing I outsourced was I brought on a project manager to just deal with everything so that I could then focus more on marketing the business and writing blog posts and all of the like working on the business type stuff. And then as that scaled, we then brought in people below all of those people. So then there'd be like the project manager would have an assistant, and the website builder would have like 4 website builders under them. And then we ended up with like 5 keyword researchers. And then we would promote one of those 5 to the head of the keyword research team so that my project manager, who became my COO, could then move on and build the writing team. And that process took probably a year and a half really to get really well. And it went from like, I've never hired anyone off Upwork to Upwork is sending me Christmas cards because I'm like a VIP customer in the space of about 2 years, maybe. Yeah. So like very quickly. And I think the real key was that I didn't hire everyone myself. I hired someone whose job it was to hire people. So right. I was like, so when I brought Brad on, who is the Human Proof Design COO, even today, he would be like, right, what's the biggest bottleneck? And I'd say keyword research. And so, okay, teach me keyword research. So I taught him how we do it. He did it by himself for 2 weeks. And then he was like, right, I feel like I'm competent enough. And I was giving him feedback during this 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, right, I feel like I'm competent enough to teach it. So I'm going to go out and hire like 4 Filipinos to do it for us. And I was like, okay. And so he did that. And then he trained them. And then after 2 more weeks, he said, yeah, one of them's really good. I think he should be the manager. And I said, okay. And then that was the keyword research team. And then he's like, right, what's the next bottleneck? And so it's like ordering the content and then rinse and repeat. And so we did that systematically for, well, whatever I just said, like 18 months, around 18 months to get everything done. To the point where I was completely out of operations, except maybe replying to customer emails and stuff. And we were able to launch way more products. So like in the beginning, if a customer said to me, hey, can you also do SEO? Can you also do PBN links? Can you also do ebooks? Blah, 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 blah. We would say no because we didn't have the bandwidth. But now whenever we wanted to launch a new service, it was really a case of me designing the service, Brad figuring out the logistics of how that service would be delivered, how much it would cost, how much we should therefore charge, and then training the necessary people. We would basically just launch the product, and like it was very smooth. So we went from being like ground to a halt, customers asking for refunds, wondering why their product isn't delivered yet, to being able to like launch a new service in like 2 weeks because of like this sort of
right
team that we built, the system we built.
Very cool. And just hearing you talk about that, it is very systematic. It's an iterative approach so that you can like make progress as you go, learn from each time you launch a new product, and all of it makes sense. And that's something I've never done with any service business that I tried to do, which I know as I'm going through it, I'm like, do I want to push through this? And then I always decide no. So I'm glad people like you are doing it. And it's a good overlap. I mean, I think when you and I first met, we started our blogs, and we were in the same circles a little bit. And I mean, we were competitors, right? We didn't know what we were doing exactly. And, eventually we had 2 different markets that we were sort of focusing on where there's a great overlap, very little stepping on toes. So it's been, a good relationship where we can work together, versus like, talk bad about each other or something like that. So kind of meta, but that's my observation. So any thoughts on that?
Like on our relationship or on what?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. On the 2 like our two businesses and as we were getting started, just to decide to collaborate versus, be enemies, I guess. Because I have approached people and I'm like, we could probably work together well, and they just completely ignore my email, or they're rude and they're like, no, go F yourself, right? So so any observations on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can probably draw a straight line from like the day I started trying to approach other people to kind of where I am now. And there were people that didn't reply. Like, one of the first people I contacted was Spencer Hawes, and he replied, but like, he wasn't going to collaborate with me because he didn't really know who I was back then. And so I was like, okay, maybe I should start smaller. And there were other people who I messaged, like Tung Tran, who was from Cloud Living, who was like, I'm not really interested in promoting your stuff, but here's some feedback. Here's how you could improve it. And because of that, we actually maintained the relationship. And I actually went to Tung's wedding like last September. So,
Nice.
He said no, but in a very respectful way. And actually, whenever I launched services, I was like, they have to pass like the Tung test or the Gale test from Authority Hacker, because like if those guys like your stuff, it means it's good quality. And so then, there were people like Authority Hackers who again weren't really interested in promoting my stuff, but they were like nice guys and they were still happy, and we've linked to each other and stuff like that. And then, there were people who were just rude. But then there were people like you who replied, and Matthew Allen, he was very friendly early on. Who else? John Haver was sort of ultimately ended up becoming a competitor through his association with Brand Builders. But in the beginning, like, he was friendly. And we're still friendly, but I mean, in the beginning we were more willing to work together than later on. Empire Flippers as well. They were huge in helping me. So I think it's just kind of one of those things where it's like you just have to reach out to everyone in the space, and maybe not just reach out like, hey, link to me, or like, hey, be my collaborator. But you're going to get some people who you vibe with early on and some people who you don't. And that's just like how it goes. And I think a lot of the success Onfolio's had, because we've barely really marketed it apart from the fact that I've come on podcasts and stuff and sent a few emails out, but it's already like on course to be a pretty good year. And I think a lot of that comes to the fact that I've spent years like building up contacts and networking and just generally making friends with people. And I think like in your case, sometimes there was maybe incentive to not share each other's stuff. Sometimes there's more incentive. Like, I know we promoted your course for a while and then we had our own course, so kind of didn't make sense. But I think I guess while all of that's going on, like, we were always maintaining like a kind of cordial friendship anyway, which means that just stuff's
right.
I don't know. It's always positive. So
yep. Well, in fact, I heard you were working on something new, and I said, let's talk about it. Come on the show so we could tell people about it. So it all makes sense. Just, I mean, if people are watching out there and you're worried about competition, like, maybe you don't have to worry too much. Like, the rising tide lifts all boats and all that. All the people that you mentioned that were friendly are still like, they're still doing something and they're moving on to other things. So maybe that has something, or maybe that's evidence to like being, nice and friendly and professional as far as networking is a good idea versus, trying to beat people up out there. So, okay. So were you going to say something there?
No, I was just going to say, like, you're right. Like, and you never know if like 4 years later, you're going to bump into these people and become friends with them. I bumped into Spencer and Chris Guthrie at Traffic and Conversion in San Diego last March, and it was like, oh, hey, yeah, how are you? I know you. And we like had beers together and stuff. And so Nice. It's like, I was like, ha, I got you eventually.
Yeah.
You're on my friends list now.
That's funny.
So, yeah.
And like the other thing, like you said, you emailed Spencer back in the day, and like he didn't know who you are, but now you've been around, you've proven you're, a responsible, knowledgeable person. You're running a solid business, and there's a lot of social proof out there to, I guess, support that. So, I mean, at this point, he's confident that you're not going to, do something like that. The problem is if someone promotes you and then you turn out to be like a bad dude, then they sort of lose some credibility with their audience. So that's the risk out there. And I know people have approached me and they're trying. I mean, they want me to like promote their product or something like that, and I don't know who they are. Maybe they're a little bit rude in the email. They don't even tell me their last name, like that sort of stuff. Like it's a little hard. So it's hard to separate who's I guess a professional. So
to some extent, maybe you open the email, you scan it, and you're not even going to bother checking out what their offer is because of the bandwidth, and you're just like, oh, whatever, I'll deal with them later. And sometimes I remember actually, I think Chris Lee from Rank XL, he sent me an email promoting his course when he very first started it. And I think that was just an example of an email I opened and sort of glazed over and was like, oh, I'll think about that later. And then I closed the email and I never thought about it again. And then I think I saw like Stuart Walker from Niche Hacks promoting the course or something like that, or someone. And I was like, that sounds familiar. And I went back and I opened the email and was like, oh yeah, hey Chris, how's it going? So it kind of, once you've been on the other side of it, you can kind of realize like what it's like when you're doing the outreach. You can see what the other person's like, and they're not deliberately ignoring you or trying to be rude or anything, but they probably just don't have the incentive or the bandwidth to give you much time until, like you say, until you prove yourself.
Got it. So Onfolio, can you tell me about like the origin of Onfolio? You mentioned you had the idea and then, were growing human proof, and then it sort of came back to you. So how did you get from, there to where you are now?
Yeah, I actually remember, I don't remember what year it was. I think it was probably 2014. And I was at lunch with my wife. Back then she was my girlfriend. And I remember saying to her, like I was talking about human proof or something. And I was like, yeah, I had another business idea today. I think a really cool business would be like, I know how to buy a website off Empire Flippers and grow it, but I don't have like $30,000 spare. But other people have $30,000 spare, but they don't know how to grow a website. So wouldn't it be really cool if I could partner with people like that? And she was like, oh, kind of like real estate or stockbroker, that kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, you should do my marketing. I was like, yeah, exactly. But the problem is I'm just some dude in Taiwan, like I barely full time in my own business. And like, I don't have a track record or a team or authority or any of those things that you need. But maybe one day I will. And then, that was the end of that idea. And then 2018, I did a deep dive survey to the human proof design audience, which is from the Ask method by Ryan Levesque. And basically, I was just surveying the audience and I was asking them what their biggest problems were. And one or two people mentioned they had money to buy websites, like big websites, not like done for you ones, but they didn't know where to buy them or what to do with them once they bought them. Like I think 3 or 4 people mentioned it out of a couple hundred, and I was like, that's actually high enough to continue this conversation. So I emailed a few people and was like, so do you think a course on website investing would be good, or do you think a service? And some of them were like, yeah, a course would be good. Some were like, a service would be good. And then so I actually built a course, and while promoting the course, even more people were like, a service would be good. And I was like, I know, I'm just trying to promote the course first. And then I was like, wait a second, I had this idea before, like 4 years ago. But now I am an authority. I do have a track record. I do have experience. I do have a team. Interesting. And I also think the market now is more mature. There's better websites for sale. Like, no offense to the Empire Flippers sites in 2014, but the ones for sale now are way better. They're a lot bigger. There are sites on the market right now like $5 million, $2 million, $800,000 that are like still just content websites. And there's more serious money moving in, but there's still a lack of like professional sort of managers. There's more and more people coming to the same conclusions that I'm coming to, and the more I talk about it, the more other people will enter the space. So, if they haven't built a service business before, good luck learning how to do that. But yeah, so I just kind of felt like I got the validation. I realized like I had all the answers this time, whereas I didn't 4 or 5 years ago. And I just started talking about it a little bit, and people were like, yeah, I've been looking for this kind of business for a long time. So suddenly, like, we've got like 30 sites that we're running, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess this is a good idea. So that's kind of, it's like, for me, it's a great story, but for a beginner listening to this, or someone who's trying to find their way, they might be like, well, yeah, that's great for you because you already had an audience and you already, you were able to leverage your network and so on. And like, yeah, I can't really deny that. So I think it's just a case of understanding maybe your market and looking for a gap or a need. And I think that is why I keep falling into service businesses, because I keep seeing these needs out there and not being afraid to run a service to fulfill that need. And I guess my advice to anyone who is a beginner like that would be to just, the more experience you get in your niche, the sooner you'll be in that kind of situation that I was in. Because it is just a kind of case of like, what do they say? Like, you have to work for 10,000 hours to get overnight success or something like that. And I don't know if Onfolio will be classed as an overnight success, but it definitely feels like a case of it's very easy right now because of what I've done before. So, people just have to do that before bit to get to this kind of position.
Right. Interesting. Well, and I mean, you started with no audience and no credibility, and you built it over time. So yeah, like you said, it's a 8-year overnight success or something like that. But when you look at it though, it's really, Onfolio is a bit of an extension, another service business. It's not like you've switched business models completely. It's just like, higher stakes, higher investment value, but it's the same concepts overall. So very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So from a like services that Onfolio provides, so can you kind of outline like what the process is? Like if someone's interested in investing, maybe it's like a private investment group, maybe a family trust or something like that. Like what happens?
Yeah, so we've got 3 services really. Well, we've got 3, but we've got 2 because no one's ever used one of them. So someone suggested it to me, and I was like, "Yeah, that's a good idea." And no one's ever gone for it. So one service is actually kind of, we partner with people who already have sites, and whether they built that site from scratch or they bought it, we partner up, and generally people come to us for 2 reasons. Like, one is because they just don't know how to grow the site anymore, or they don't have the capacity. Like maybe they have a full-time job. They're like, I know what I need to do to get this to the next stage, but I don't have the time. Others just don't know what they need to do. Or it's people that just don't have the bandwidth or the desire to run their sites anymore. Like we run a couple of sites for Ace Chapman, he has a huge portfolio of sites, and he's just like, okay, can you guys just run these 4 for us? And then there's like those people. those sites, we don't just take like smaller sites, because it's not really worth our time, and we want the site to be established, so that we can turn the dials and make stuff happen. And then the other service is similar, but it's like someone has money, they want to get started, but they don't know how to run a site. So they'll buy the site and we'll run it for them, and we'll help them find the site. We'll do the due diligence. We'll hop on a call with the seller and do all of that stuff. And then they own the asset, but we'll, in exchange for a management fee and a share of anything we can grow, we will run the site for them. And again, for that one, like, we have a minimum, which is $50,000, because anything below that, there's not really enough profit in the site for us to make for us to take a management fee, and then for there to be a budget for growing the site and the investor to get ROI. So like, the bigger the amount of money, the bigger it is for everyone. The other service which no one uses is just like something kind of in between. It's like, you want to buy a site and you want to run it yourself, but you don't want to buy a scam. We'll just do the due diligence for you. But
okay.
no one's interested. They either want us to run it or they're fine.
Okay.
And then one thing we are looking at doing is kind of a group buy type thing, where it's like we really want to move up the food chain, because when you buy a site that is, say, 500K, it's got way more profit in its P&L. Generally, it has a team already, like VAs and everything included. Content costs are already included usually, so it's got the growth budget like baked in, and also it's a much higher quality site, and we can run fewer of them. Like, we could run 500K sites and make a very nice management fee to be worth our time and grow those sites, but we don't need to hire like 50. We don't need to buy 50 sites to pay for our overheads, because 50 sites, you can't really focus on them. So what we're thinking of doing is, like, maybe someone only has 30K, or someone has 100K, but they don't want to just buy one single site with it. So we'll probably, like, what we think about doing is, like, every quarter, basically pooling people's money together in like a JV, and then, setting it up as like a legal entity, and just buying like one site with it. And so that's more like a kind of like a real estate investment type thing, like the way that works. And then we'll just run it and predetermine whether we're going to do it for cash flow or like sell it in 2 years or something like that. So that's the service which has attracted the most attention. I thought it would be the partnership, but generally people that already have sites, they're less willing to give away some of the share, which is understandable. Whereas other people are like, yeah, I have money, I just want to invest, and I don't want to buy a site and have it go to zero.
Right.
So so that's the area that we're most excited about, and where we can offer the most value as well.
Gotcha. And that the service, the vetting service, that, totally makes sense to me. In fact, people have hired me to vet sites ahead of time. So I bet it's just a matter of time before that's like one of the more popular services, because, whatever it is that you charge is going to be a bargain versus like buying a site that, is somehow scammy, or there's something that they didn't know to look for as an issue. So I think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah. I think, like, even if we charged like if someone's going to buy a site for, say, 60 grand, we could charge like 10 grand and it would still be a good deal for them, but we would probably charge like a lot less than that. But there are companies out there that do that already as well. So, like Centurica, for example. So we're not like, that's a good one-time payment to bring in some money for us, but it's like not really the kind of long-term play that I see Onfolio succeeding with. So
sure,
I'm not too fussed about the success of that one.
And it's, in my head, I'm like, well, it's a great, once you get them in the door and show them value, you can, upsell them on the management stuff, unless they just happen to be, I would imagine a person that would hire for a vetting service doesn't necessarily have the skills to grow it. So maybe it's a lead magnet kind of, or not a lead magnet, but a tripwire situation into the big. I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but
yeah, maybe I should just do the vetting for like $100 or something.
Yeah.
Just as like
just get them in the door.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
can you, I'm sorry to interrupt you there. Were you done with your thought?
No, I was just mumbling to myself, so it's cool.
All right. So I don't know like how much you can reveal, but like what's the general process? So let's say someone comes in like Ace, for example, who has like a site that's doing well. Obviously you're incentivized, I believe, to, grow the site, right? Like you want to grow it, you get paid more. So everybody has the same incentive. They want to, increase the revenue. So can you take us through just some of the basic things that the team does to grow the site?
Yeah. So every site's different, but generally we start out in the same place. And most sites that we've partnered on have had some level of technical SEO issue. Pretty much everyone we've been like, well, the first thing we're going to do is fix that. And that issue might be as basic as like not having an SSL certificate installed, to sometimes we get people that haven't fixed the Yoast, the great Yoast error of 2018, just where a bunch of their stuff got indexed that shouldn't. Some of them have architecture issues. So just like navigation and site structure and things like that. Pretty much every single one has speed issues. Generally, if someone knows how to get their speed good, then they don't need our service. So we normally will fix all them first. Then there's a lot of CRO type stuff. Like most people, like if it's an Amazon site, they don't really have mobile optimized tables. I'm sure Matthew Allen would have something to say about that with his plugin. But yeah, a lot of them don't have mobile friendly tables or mobile friendly this or mobile friendly that. And from there, it's very much a bespoke plan. Like some of them, it's like, right, now we're just going to smash the site with content until all that site scales. Other sites, it's like, we need to disavow all your spammy backlinks. Other sites, it's like, oh, you've got an info product funnel. Let's try doubling the pricing on that and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's always the same. We do a technical audit, a speed audit, and a kind of keyword and backlink audit. And based on that, we usually have something to improve. And sometimes that can be enough to turn the site around as well. They're not always like distressed sites when they come to us, but yeah, quite often it can turn them around. But then from there, it really varies, like what we're going to do next.
Sure.
So,
very interesting. Yeah, I could definitely imagine some people have sites where there's a ton of content, almost no backlinks, or vice versa, where there's 50 posts but a crazy amount of backlinks, and there's opportunities to like fill the gaps wherever they happen to be. Interesting. So it sounds like a lot of work needs to be done for any of the sites. So tell me about the team that you have now, or sort of how that's structured. I know, but actually I'll just leave it at that. I won't speculate. So what's the team like? How do you run
that? Fortunately, I hired a very good project manager recently. So things have been a lot more smooth over the last couple of months. But essentially there's not actually that many of us like on the actual sort of core team. There's probably about 10, and that will range from like me, who's like the boss, and then Alejandro, who does a lot of he does all of the audits and a lot of he's kind of an extension of me in the way that he'll do a lot of the game plans for the sites and deciding what we're going to do. But then he's also strong in other areas. He's a lot better at technical SEO than I am, so he does all of that, all of the audits. And then we have the project manager, Esby, and then so she's just like making sure we're all doing stuff. She's like, whenever my Asana queue gets to 0, suddenly it's back to 10 again. And then we have just various freelancers below that and people who are full time who like we have someone called Hannah who's really good at Pinterest, and so she runs that side of thing. Because we've got a lot of sites that do well with the kind of Pinterest and Mediavine model. There's a lot of people like in affiliate marketing who are really focused on like SEO and best, blah blah blah, and then there's loads and loads of people, mostly work at home mums, but not. There's a lot of others in the group as well who are just like silently crushing it with Pinterest and Mediavine and making like 5K a month, 10K a month. It's crazy. So yeah, Pinterest is a big part of what we do. And then yeah, we just have like sort of VAs below that who, you know, like they do content uploading and audits and on-page SEO tweaks and all of that stuff. Yeah, and then we bring in, you know, like if we need content written, we use an agency or use like human-proof designs articles and SEO, like authority builders and maybe some other more grey hat ones, depending on if it's like our site or not. Stuff,
Sure.
Yeah, things like that.
Interesting. Okay. And like when you branched out to like work on Folio, and I guess slowly we're deciding to, you know, make it your main focus, like how did you, I guess, determine what success was? How do you know you're on the right track? Sounds like, you know, you have quite a few sites that you're managing now, but how did you project what you wanted to do over 6, 12, 18 months, knowing that you were going to be working on it full time?
I guessed. I had that initial validation early on, like I mentioned, and from there it was like, I guess I was in a situation where I was like, all I need to do is get enough customers, and at least this is how I rationalized it in my head. I was like, if I can just have, say, 10 clients or partners, I don't really think of them as clients, 10 partners around that number, that would be enough to pay for my team's overheads. And then my team can work on my own sites for free. So therefore, because sometimes I would have this thought like, why do I need to bother? Why don't I just have 5 of my own sites, maybe make 20K a month off those 5, which is very easy to do, or even 30K a month off just those 5 sites, and just work on the 5 sites myself and have no team. Or even just have one site, you know, doing 15K, that would keep me happy. And then it was like, well, I kind of want a diversification and I want to move up the food chain, as I talked about. I didn't want to just be having to do all the work myself. I didn't want to be reliant on my own like businesses as well. So it was, for me, it was about de-risking my own stuff. And also I was like, yeah, so I'm pretty sure Onfolio is going to be a good idea, but worst case scenario, as long as it can just pay my bills, then the money I make from my own sites is kind of like free money. But then when I started talking about it, like to FE International and Empire Flippers and within the Rhodium Facebook group, I don't know if you're aware, there was a lot of people saying that's a great idea. Lots of people need that. And so before maybe people started coming in, I got a lot of people telling me it was a good idea, which doesn't necessarily mean it is a good idea, but it gave me enough confidence to keep going. And now we get like 1 or 2 people messaging us a day talking about like the possibilities of working together. So yeah, to the extent where I never even bothered creating a sales page for the service. I was like, just contact us here. And then people started messaging me and I was like, oh, maybe I should build out that page. And then more people started messaging me and I was like, maybe I shouldn't build out that page. Like, maybe I should just leave it coming soon. So that's kind of like, I guess I was fortunate enough to get just enough confirmation early on and then mapping out where I want it to be in a year, that's kind of it's more like I'm in a position where I can build the company how I want it to be. And so sometimes you're like, should I do this? Should I do that? Do I think my investors will want this thing or that thing? And it's like, well, what do I want? Because I'm in a position to say no to investors. So how do I want the company to be? Who do I want to work with? What kind of sites do I want to work on? And then go that way. So that's kind of how I've started repositioning it over the last few weeks.
Great answer. I know that was a tough one, but like, just I'll sort of restate it and summarize a little bit just to make sure I got it right. So you kind of looked at it holistically. You're like, what do I need to like live day to day? Obviously, you have some cash flow going on, so you don't have to pay the rent. You can make some decisions based on what you actually want to work on, the kind of company you want to create. And from there, you had some early validation from smart people and professionals like veterans in the industry validating the idea. And you had enough traction early on from your multiple years of, building your brand, establishing authority and having contacts in a network. So you were able to get enough people on board pretty quick so that you knew that it wasn't just a good idea from like a conceptual standpoint, but people would actually pay you money to get moving. So is that pretty good? Did I get that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, yeah.
All right. And then I like what you said about building the company that you want to work at. You're fortunate enough, you've worked hard enough that you can say no to clients that maybe you don't want to work with for whatever reason, So what kind of company do you want to build? What are you aiming for here?
So I want to, what I've noticed is really cool about websites, particularly content websites, in fact, maybe exclusively content websites, is that as the website grows in size, the complexity doesn't, and the work required doesn't. Like I was looking at a site that was for sale at FE International, and it was just an affiliate site. It made some of its money from Amazon, some of them from a private affiliate one, which if I mention that, it would give away the niche. But the site was for sale for like $970,000, so basically $1 million, and it required, according to the seller, which is always slightly not true, but it seemed legit enough to me based on my knowledge of the site. It's 4 hours a month. And it was bringing in 30-ish K a month profit off 32K revenue. So it had no expenses. And I've seen sites, even bigger sites, those ones like the Wirecutter and Best Products. There's another one on the market which does 140K a month off I think it does 140K revenue, around 100K profit. And again, it's got the team and the content and everything baked into the P&L. So I was like, yeah, I could run that easily. I could run 10 of those sites easily. And then that's bringing in a couple 100K a month. And that would be kind of fun. Whereas, trying to scale to having 30 sites that make 1K a month, that's very hard. So I want to ultimately end up pooling money together, whether it's through a fund or less formal legal structure, kind of what we were talking about earlier, the mini group buys, and just have this kind of mini website empire, I guess.
Right.
Maybe just 10 really good sites. And I think it's going to be a lot easier to do in the future because there's better and better sites being listed for sale and more money coming into the space. So I kind of just want to be working in that space. And so right now we could probably do that right now, if we had access to the capital, but it's like we're not rushing. Like we're just going through the motions. And every site we work on, we learn something. Or every investor we partner with, some of them we've already been like, yeah, this isn't going to work. So every person we partner with, or every person who calls us to potentially partner, we learn a little bit more. Every website we learn a ton. So we're just kind of being like, let's just spend like 6 months to a year just learning as much as we can so that we can play in the bigger leagues without, messing up big amounts of money.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, are you good on time right now? I know we're right at the top of the hour here, so like a couple more minutes here.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure.
A little bit longer.
Okay, so I just have a couple more questions for you. So every now and then, I would say every couple months, someone has some story about like affiliate marketing is going to end, or SEO is going to end, or whatever. Obviously, you're hitching your wagon to this in an even bigger way. So, what concerns do you have in, for example, the Amazon affiliate space, where I think a lot of sites are around that, or even on the, like you said, the Pinterest, Mediavine kind of structure. So do you have any concerns with like the Google business model, and you know what I'm saying? So I'll just let you riff on that.
I mean, the short answer is no. Like, I don't have those concerns. I think a lot of articles I've read, or kind of arguments that I've seen people say for why that kind of Google affiliate marketing model is going to go away, are at best like ill-informed, and at worst just sensationalist clickbait. In fact, I think there was one in the 5-figure group where I said this is a really poor researched article. I think maybe models will change and tactics will change. Like maybe Amazon affiliate won't work, or maybe even the SEO play of ranking in Google and getting a click to Amazon or whatever, that may not work, because like I think it will, but maybe it won't. But I think the fundamental basis of creating content that people like and then monetizing that content, whether it's through ads or like affiliate links or services or memberships or whatever, I don't think that fundamental is ever going to go away. Maybe SEO will go away. Maybe social will go away. Maybe it won't. Maybe some new platform will come out, like we'll all be in VR doing something, who knows? But I just can't see that model going away, because it's just publishing, really, and publishing's been around for a very long time. Yep. And the reason you said I'm hitching my wagon in a very big way, I'd say, well, it's less risky to work with a bigger site. Like you've got more money at risk, but bigger sites are better. They're more defensible. They have audiences. They have email lists. They have proper funnels and monetization. So I would say there's more risk in having like a 1K a month Amazon affiliate site than there is in having a 100K a month, like whatever site. Mm-hmm. So
sure. Good answer. Well put. And the last question here is, I know I make mistakes, constantly, I would say. So I know Onfolio is sort of early in its like growth, but have you made any mistakes, any lessons learned with Onfolio so far?
Well, before I started Onfolio, I bought a website with my own money, which I probably shouldn't have done because it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. So fortunately, I learned that early on, because now when I'm buying sites with other people's money, like I'm not making that mistake with their money. That mistake was basically, I just bought a site thinking, oh, I'm going to grow the traffic. I'm going to improve the funnel. Like, yeah, maybe some elements of the site are a bit crap. Like maybe the sales page isn't very good and the ebook that it's selling could be better, but it's fine because I'm a good marketer. I'm going to improve the funnel, and like I never did improve the funnel, and I actually made it worse. And then I spent 6 months making it better, and now it's roughly where it is when I bought it. And it was just a bit frustrating because I probably could have spent that money, quite a large amount of money. I could have spent that money on a site with more opportunity if I hadn't like got super attracted to, like, I was just focusing on the potential that the site could get to rather than looking at where the site was and how risky it was. And like a month after I bought it, for example, it got banned from Pinterest. So its traffic went to zero. And I got it unbanned because it was just Pinterest sites get banned all the time because of people doing like fake spam reports and stuff. And then you say, I didn't spam. And they say, oh, yeah, you didn't. And they unban you. But that was scary. And I'm trying to think of any other mistakes. I guess we had a couple of sites recently where I wish we'd moved a bit faster because we partnered on 2 sites in late May and we were going to run them through. They'd been losing traffic a bit. One of them got hit in the March 12th update. One of them had just slowly lost traffic. And we've turned sites around by going through our audit process and improving the technicals. And those ones we were like, yeah, we're going to like get right to work on them like beginning of June. And then the June update came in and they tanked slightly more. So I kind of wish we'd worked on them sooner because maybe they would have turned around in that update instead of tanked more. So I guess the mistake with that one was just not working on them as, you know, when you run a lot of sites, sometimes you're like, well, it's fine if I do this next week instead of this week. And 9 times out of 10 it is, but sometimes it's like, I should have done like the technical things should have been done first.
Gotcha.
So that's just a missed opportunity more than a mistake, I think.
Yeah. And you never know the timing on, you know, any of that stuff. Like you said, 90% of the time, it's fine if you wait. It's fine. So,
yeah.
Well, we're at the end here. So, Dom, do you have any advice for people who are thinking of like purchasing a site or, I guess, working with Onfolio?
I guess I would say try and read up about the model as much as you can before you either buy a site or work with us, because the best way to learn is by getting skin in the game and everything, but like don't come into it completely ignorant. Like don't expect it to be fully passive. Just try to, you know, educate yourself a bit first. Pretty standard advice, I guess.
Yep. Awesome. Well, people can find you at onfolio.co, of course. Anywhere else you want people to connect with you?
That's the best place right now. Haven't set up like a Twitter account yet. So yeah, that'll be the best place. Just reach out via the contact form. They all come to me. So
right on.
For now. Yeah.
Very good. Well, always a pleasure to catch up, Dom, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.
Cheers. Great to be here.
All right, thanks a lot to Dom for taking the time to chat with us today. We're usually located like across the world, so as normal, it was pretty late in the day for him for the interview and kind of early for me, but that's what we got to do. So definitely check out Onfolio, and if you haven't, like if you're not familiar with Human Proof Designs, I'm also, you know, still good friends with the crew over there, and I like their products. In fact, I'm doing a case study with them. You know, depending on when you're listening and watching this, it may be finished or I may be right in the middle of it, and you should check it out if you are unfamiliar with Human Proof as well. So, all right, thanks a lot, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.